It's a very interesting title you chose. The future is not what it used to be. But it's so true. Because it wasn't that long ago when I was growing up, maybe it was long ago, the future had a very definite cast. Everybody knew what the future was. The future was secularism. Religion was no longer relevant. After the Holocaust, it was all over. The Jews who came from Europe, with all the traditions, with all the observance, they were the last generation. It was going to die with them. I remember my grandfather had that attitude. He was hoping that his grandchildren, meaning me, he was hoping that I would at least observe Shabbos once in a while, because you daren't expect any more. This was America. And here, Judaism was just not going to happen, or any religion. This was not a place for religion. And every generation, every year, there would be more secularism and less religion, and it just was going to die out. It was 3,320 years or 10 years, and it was enough. Gave it a long run, it was nice and impressive, but it was finished. Anyone you would ask back then, in the late 50s, religion was out. The future was secular. There was no question. I even remember people saying, I would be more observant, and I do believe in God, but come on, what's the point? 50 years from now, it's all going to be over. So that prediction, or that image of the future, was not only an opinion, it was actually a discouraging factor. What's the point of starting and becoming observant when you know it's not going to last much longer? That was the future, and nobody questioned it. Nobody. Except the Rebbe. So the writer, Herman Wouk, visited with the Rebbe very early on, when the Rebbe took leadership in 1950. And he said to the Rebbe, this is America. Here, you can't tell people to do anything. So this is not Europe. How is Judaism going to fly here? And the Rebbe's answer was, you can't tell people to do anything. But if you teach them, here in America, they can do everything. The only person with that attitude. The Rebbe believed in America. The previous Rebbe, his father-in-law, chose to come to America for a reason. He saw Judaism blossoming in America, and only in America, because of something that Americans have that Europeans or Easterners don't have. People told the Rebbe that they wish him well, but it's not going to happen. So what did the Rebbe see in the future of America? The Rebbe saw two things. Number one, the American was uncomplicated. The mentality in the East and in Europe had become too complicated. Because of the difficulties of life, mostly political difficulties, over generations, people developed a shrewdness, a complex personality, because you couldn't say what you thought. You couldn't do what you believed. You couldn't be honest and straightforward. You had to play the game, whether it was under the Tsar or under communism, under the sultans, the dictators. So people developed these dual personalities. You behave one way, you think another way, you wish things were a third way. You became very complex. Nothing was simple. Like this Jewish couple who came to America, and they landed at Ellis Island, and they were filling out their forms. And one of the questions on the form was birthday. And the husband leaned over to the wife and said, "Which birthday should I give?" And the wife said, "The real one. This is America." You never gave your real birthday, you never gave your real birthplace. There was always some scheme going on. And it made people less than honest. Americans didn't have that problem. The American was straightforward. I say what I believe what I say. There was something wholesome and honest. At the same time, there was also an openness, a kind of a cosmopolitan mentality where the American feels comfortable, or used to feel comfortable, anywhere in the world. They thought globally. They had a much bigger view of reality and of life than the restricted thinking in Europe. So here's what the Rebbe says. Freedom is not un-Jewish. Freedom is not anti-Torah. Judaism doesn't flourish in Europe because you can impose it on people. On the contrary, in freedom, we can be better Jews. Freedom allows us to serve God with a whole heart and with no fear, with pride. It allows us to share it with others, something we could not do in Europe for at least 2,000 years. So the Rebbe says here in America, because of the freedom, if you teach people, they can do everything. There are no restrictions here. So Judaism will be better here, stronger, more enthusiastic than it was back in the old country. And so the Rebbe started to remake the future. I think most people today would say, what is the future? Well, you can see the future is observant people. The future is more religion. Because people who have a religion, a belief, a devotion, a commitment, they will continue. They will have families, they will raise their families. They will be the mainstay. They will be the foundation of all of civilization. I'm going to tell you an interesting story. Back in the 80s, a number of Russian immigrants settled in Minnesota. The young ones had never heard of religion, of Bible, of 10 Commandments. They knew nothing of it. And to them it was something to be avoided and mocked. They considered themselves scientific, sophisticated atheists. One day, one of these young men, a nice Jewish boy, who knew very, very little, came to the Chabad house, all excited. What happened was he drove out into the countryside, in the farmland, and was driving along the road, and he sees this little business on the side of the road that was selling vegetables. So he figured fresh vegetables straight from the farm, stop and buy some. He gets out of the car and he looks around for the owner of this establishment. There's nobody there. He waits and waits and looks around. Then he goes up closer to the booth and he notices that there are bushels of vegetables. There's a price marked on each of the bushels, baskets. And there's a large can hanging on one of the 2x4s with cash in it. And he realized that the idea was you take the vegetables you want and you pay for it by putting the money in the can, and that nobody is going to be coming around to run the shop. He was stunned. Back in Moscow, when they parked their cars at night, they took in the hubcaps, they took in the windshield wipers, they took in the battery. I think he said they even took in the side view mirrors. Because if you don't take them in at night, they won't be there in the morning. And he looked at this booth. He discovered God. In Moscow, the money would be gone instantly. The vegetables would be gone. The booth itself will be taken apart and used for firewood. And all the way home, he tried to figure out how is this possible? How can people put out food and money and trust on an honor system that people will pay for what they take? And he came to one unavoidable conclusion. These people believe in God. It turns out, he made a whole philosophy out of this. It turns out that he realized that the only way democracy works, contrary to what they were taught back in Russia, the only way a democracy can work is if you elect a government that enforces the laws that you believe in the most. The principles that you want to live by. You elect a government that's going to support that lifestyle and enforce that lifestyle on people who want those laws, who have those values. But if you don't start off with values, if you don't already believe thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, there's no way you can have a democracy. You must have a dictator, because people are going to misbehave. Who's going to stop them if not a very strong government, oppressive arm? It's true. You cannot impose a democracy on people who don't believe. All they want are the freedoms with none of the responsibilities, none of the values, none of the principles, just freedom. And that's anarchy. And when anarchy starts to show up, some strong-armed dictator is bound to take over. Amazing discovery. A little vegetable booth on the side of the road convinced him that there is a God and that it's indispensable. You cannot have civilization without the belief in God. So the Rebbe was very optimistic and was in love with the nature of American youth. The uncomplicated, honest, straightforward, innocent commitment that an American is capable of would bring fresh enthusiasm, fresh idealism to the mitzvahs that we're supposed to be observing and have been observing for 3,300 years. But now it was going to be with more joy, totally voluntary, out of commitment, out of pleasure. What a beautiful picture compared to what was going on in Europe. So the Rebbe created an army of young people. And as you all know, young people are the heart of the Chabad movement. Chabad houses. Like Dennis Prager says, I travel a lot and I see many, many Chabad houses all over the world. And there's something strange. They're all 40 years old, all of them. Even if they're 25, they're 40. And even if they're 75, they're 40. They're all 40 years old. And they're all happy. And that makes me suspicious, he says. What do? Kill off the sad ones? How can they all be happy? There is something amazing, something very alive, something very real. And the Rebbe created it when they all said it couldn't be done. So what is the future now? The future now is young couples raising their children with the awareness that Judaism is alive and well. God is lovable. God should be served wholeheartedly, enthusiastically, not only to maintain a sane society, but to fulfill the bigger purpose for which we exist. You can't argue with that. People devoted to such a cause cannot fail. But let's understand this a little deeper. Since we're celebrating the Rebbe's Yahrzeit, we should go to the heart and the core of the issue. For all of history, if you want to talk about how a person radically changes, revolutionizes life, listen to this. For all of history, anything that was accomplished, everything that was accomplished, came as a result of need. Need is the mother of all invention. True. The farmer got up early in the morning and went out to work in the fields because you had to. I mean, if you want to live and survive, you had to. You know, the seasons come, and if you don't get the seeds in at the right season, then you will not have a harvest, and you will starve in the cold winter. So fathers woke up their sons to go out and plow the fields. You had to. I know you want to sleep a little more, but we have to. We have to milk the cow. You have to. From the dawn of civilization, this has been the truth. This has been the motivating force. You have to. We need it. Even the Industrial Revolution came out of need. We needed more food. You can't have everyone raising their own crops. So the farmers had to produce enough for the whole city. Had to. So the city had to pay taxes. And the government had to help. You had to. And that's why when people didn't do what they had to do, people died. In the religious world, the religious grandfather wakes his grandchild up and says, "Get up, it's time to go to shul. It's time to go to yeshiva. You got to study, you got to keep kosher, you got to keep Shabbos, you got to get ready for Shabbos." The key word was, you have to. You need to. Today, you wake up your pre-kindergartner, and you say, "Come, get your shoes on. You're going to miss the bus." Can't miss the bus. You got to catch the bus. You got to be on the bus. You got to get to school. You got to. Today, it doesn't ring with so much truth. The kid is going to kindergarten, pre-kindergarten. He has to make it. He has to be on the bus. She's got to get to class. You must go to school. Yeah, why? Well, you want to die? See, today it sounds a little far-fetched. If I don't go to school today, I'm going to die? Who's going to die? Well, if you don't make it through school and you don't get into a good college and you don't graduate and you don't get a good job and you don't pay the mortgage, and then eventually you're going to end up on the streets and you're going to catch a disease and you're going to die. And the kid looks at his parents and says, "What are you babbling about? It don't make no sense whatsoever." And in the religious world, the grandfather wakes up his American grandchild and says, "Get up, you have to go to shul." The American kid says, "I have to." I don't have to. Right? This is America. I don't have to. And the religious grandfather says, "Yeah, you have to." He says, "Why do I have to?" He said, "Because when you die, you're going to go to hell." When I die, I'm going to go to hell. And that's why I can't sleep this morning. Something's not, it's not working. It's not working. Most recently, young children are saying to their parents, "I didn't ask to be born. I didn't even ask to be born. Why do I have to go to school? Why do I have to clean up my room? I didn't even ask to be born." And the parents think the kid is depressed and suicidal. He's not. You see, the message of Judaism has always been, God took us to Mount Sinai and gave us a Torah in which he describes the many, many ways in which we can serve him. He's telling us what he needs from his creation, his wish list. Keeping kosher is what God asks us to do. Keeping Shabbat, God asks us to do. Putting on tefillin, lighting the candles, making a blessing before you eat, after you eat. These are all things that he asks for. 3,333 years ago, we stood at Mount Sinai and we said, "Yes, we'll do it. You took us out of Egypt, we owe you one." We didn't realize one is not enough. It's 613. But we said, "Yes, we'll be your people and we will serve you." We will serve you. We'll do what you ask. And that's what we've been doing. Only we kind of lost our focus. It started to sound like I keep kosher because I must. I keep Shabbos because I must. I give tzedakah, I give charity because that's what I am supposed to do. So let me tell you this little story. A young boy from America goes off to Europe to yeshiva. It's a European-style yeshiva. It doesn't really work for him. Doesn't last. After 3 months, he's home. But he's a changed person. He went there as a foolish and immature child, and he came back a mensch. What happened was this. The day he arrived, naturally, went into the office and asked the rabbi there, the dean of the yeshiva, he said, I need to call my mother. Which phone can I use? He said it in Yiddish. Ich darf rufen de Mamen. The dean said, you have to call your mother? He said, yes. Which phone can I use? And the dean said, you need to call your mother? The boy was surprised. Like, what are you doing? Finally, it dawned on him. He said, my mother needs me to call her. Which phone can I use? And the dean said, now you're talking. Here's the phone. It changed him. The boy says, I need to call my mother. The dean, being a student of the Rebbe, said, you need to call your mother. Think again. Till he realized, I don't need to call my mother. My mother needs me to call her. My mother is expecting a call. My mother wants to hear from me. That's why I'm going to make this phone call. So, number one, that's more accurate. Number two, now it's a value, a virtue. If I need to call my mother and I call my mother, where's the virtue? But if you're calling your mother because she needs you to call, well, now it's a mitzvah. Now you're honoring your parents. That deserves a phone call. This realization, it's not my need to be good, it's what I'm needed for. This is such a revolution. In fact, it has never existed before. So look what's happening in the world today, which the Rebbe prepared us so thoroughly for this new phenomenon. We have so many burdens. We must. You must do this, you must do that. Listen to the commercials. You have to have one of these. You got to see this place in the Far East. You got to travel. You got to experience this. You have to have this. You must. You have to. You have to. Before you die, you must. Gets a little burdensome. Got to get to work, got to get to school, got to get grades, got to get friends, got to make a phone call, got to have a phone, got to have a better phone. Makes children crazy. It's not so much the entitlement, it's the neediness. I need. I'm full of needs. A kid walks into a toy store and he needs every toy he sees. He needs it. He must have it because his friends have it. He can't show up and face his friends without having one also. Well, all of these needs accumulate and it becomes too hard. It's heavy. Don't want to get out of bed to face all those needs. So you go for therapy. I'm simplifying, of course. You go for therapy and you tell the therapist, I have so many needs and I can't get this done and I can't get that done. And the therapist says, you know, that's just on the surface. Beneath the surface, you have much more serious needs. You need to heal your relationship with your mother because she never liked you. You got to patch up your relationship with your brother because you've hated him since he was born. And you say, whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't come here to find more needs. So you go to religion. Maybe that'll give you some relief. What does religion tell you? You think you have problems now? Well, wait till you die. Oh, are you going to have problems then? So, you know, we better help you and fix things, protect you and save you. And okay, this is impossible. It's impossible. So you come to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, what are your needs? Think again. You need this, you need that, you have to have, you must. It's not true. You didn't create the world. If you didn't create the world, you don't have needs. And whatever needs you have, they're all petty. The creator of the world, he has a need. And we are here to serve him. Complete turnaround. We've always believed that we are needy, we are dependent, we are weak, we are frail, we're in trouble, we have sinned away all our merits, and that we have to pray and cry and beg God to be nice to us because we're in trouble. God, on the other hand, he's sitting up there in heaven in a lounge chair with a pina colada, looking down at his world, noticing who's misbehaving and striking him with a lightning bolt. The Rebbe said, whoa, 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 we have gotten very far from the truth. If you created a universe, wouldn't you be looking for something? Would you create a universe with no need, no purpose? On the other hand, if you are created into this universe without asking to be created, without asking to be born, would you have needs? Yes, it's true, we're dependent on God to keep us here, but he keeps us here because he needs something from us. It doesn't make us the needy ones. So the boy goes to the dean and says, I need to call my mother. Not true. Not correct. A person comes to the rabbi and says, I need to be more religious. No, not true. God needs you to put on tefillin. So here, put them on. Where's the burden? Where's the suffering? Where's the agony? You know, to do something for someone else is much more enjoyable than doing it because you need. So no, you don't need. I stop a guy in the street. I ask him, would you like to put on tefillin? He says, no, thanks. I don't need that. I said, oh, great. So let's put them on. He said, no, I don't need that. I said, I know. I know. Nobody needs to wrap leather straps on their arm. Nobody. It's a mitzvah. A mitzvah is something you don't need. You're doing it for someone else. And that's why charity is the ultimate mitzvah. Imagine a poor man knocks on your door and says, I'm hungry, can you give me a sandwich? And your answer is, I don't need this. We all know you don't need this. You're not starving. We weren't talking about you. We're talking about a hungry guy. So the future is not only more mitzvahs, it's mitzvahs done right. No force. You don't have to be observant. You don't have to keep Shabbos. You don't have to give charity. You don't need anything. You're a guest. But the Creator has a vast eternal plan. And He's depending on you to do it. So I need to call my mother. My mother needs me to call her. I need to serve God. That's almost like plagiarism. God says, I created the world in the 6 days and I rested on the Shabbos. It's my holy day. Will you join me? And after a couple of years, we walk around saying, I have to keep Shabbos. I am a Shomer Shabbos. You're like the boy saying, I need to call my mother. It's plagiarism. It's God's need, and you're stealing it and acting as if it's yours. Can you imagine if everyone in the world woke up tomorrow morning with only one thought? Does God need me today? What does He need me for? So to finish this whole narrative, I was introduced to a pastor, very nice guy, very American, which means upfront, straightforward, no games. The first words after his mouth when we were introduced was, so do you believe in the Savior? I like that. So I said, I'll tell you, I'm not looking for a God who is going to save me or help me and do for me. I want to serve God to do for Him. This man who has been pastor for over 40 years, he started to cry. He said, I never even thought of that. God is here to serve me? How did we get so far from the truth? So here's the future. The future is human beings with no needs. Does that sound like a messianic, utopian, perfect world with the coming of Mashiach? Yeah. Yes. That's what it means. It means that we're going to stop being needy. We're going to stop being dependent. We're going to stop being miserable. We won't have to scheme. We won't have to compete. We won't have to be jealous. We won't need. We will be comfortable in being the creation, not trying to be a creator. And then we will serve the Creator with absolute joy. It's like when you're home alone and you have to make lunch, especially men. What are you going to do? You'll find some half-eaten food in the fridge, or you'll open a can or a jar. Enough. What's the big deal? But your friend calls up and says, can I come over for lunch? Hey, you fire up the barbecue, to party. For someone else, it is so much more enjoyable. So here's the conclusion. The Rebbe revealed to us that we are not needy, we are needed. That is a divine truth. God brought us to Mount Sinai and said, I took you out of Egypt. See, you thought you needed to be taken out of Egypt. Well, okay, fine. I took you out of Egypt. Now you have no more needs. Now, can I tell you what I need? We are allergic to neediness because it isn't true. So when the religious grandfather says to his grandson, you must keep Shabbos, you must go to shul, it doesn't compute. I must. There's a guy who sued his parents, took them to court, claiming that they have to pay all his bills for the rest of his life. Why? Because they gave birth to him without his consent. Now, I know it sounds funny at first, but think about it. Legally, I never signed any agreement, not even orally. I never promised, I never agreed. You gave birth to me without my consent. Now you're telling me that I have to go to school, I have to get a job, I have to pay the mortgage. How do you figure? What did I do to become responsible for all of this? You went ahead and gave birth to me on your own responsibility, on your own authority. So you pay the bills. Doesn't that sound right? I mean, you invite me to an expensive restaurant and then you give me the bill? They threw it out of court. And I think the reason they threw it out of court was because the parents said, hey, we didn't ask to be born either. We're all in the same boat. So now you got to stop and say, wait a minute. So who started this mess? Someone went ahead and gave birth to children and then burdened them with the responsibilities of life. Bad deal. Not right. So go back to Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve are created by God, put in the Garden of Eden, and they're sitting there like, yeah, what? So God says, of all the fruit, of all the trees of the garden, you may eat except this one in the middle, don't eat from it. That was so intriguing because they had nothing else to do. Why were we created? Why are we here? What's going on? We are here because we are needed, not needy. Therefore, we can serve God with joy. Not only are we not burdened with needs, we're actually fulfilling a vast eternal plan for the creator of the world. How? By giving away a few dollars? By putting on tefillin? By not working on Shabbos? This is a pleasure. So what happened? The transition pre-Rebbe and post-Rebbe. What happened? The heaviness of the message. All the mitzvahs of the Torah are your obligation. You must, you have to, you need to. And what was the motivation? You want to die? You want to go to hell and suffer? In other words, at the end, it was always a threat. Why do I have to? To avoid suffering. Not only religiously. The farmer gets up because he's got to, otherwise he's going to starve. Suffer. He's going to suffer. Sometime after World War II, something cosmic shifted. Don't threaten me. I'm not buying it. I'm asking you why I need to be moral. And you're telling me because otherwise God will strike me down. I must be moral because otherwise the police will arrest me and throw me in jail. I must be moral because if not, I'm going to be neglected and starve on the streets. I don't buy it anymore. Tell me why I'm here. Stop threatening me. It's not working. Remember, Mrs. Reagan asked the teenagers of America to stay away from drugs. Just say no. That was the slogan. Just say no to drugs. And all the teenagers in America were waiting for her to finish the sentence. Just say no. Why? Why? Well, because it'll affect your brain, you're going to deteriorate, you're going to die. Yeah, and that's it. That's the best you can do. All of a sudden, living your life in order to not die stopped working. It stopped working. If I ask you why I have to keep Shabbos, and you say because otherwise you'll go to hell, that only convinces me that you don't know why. If you knew why, you would tell me. You don't know why, so you threaten me. I'm not buying it. If I'm going to serve God, it's going to be a service I'm going to do for him. Don't tell me I need to call my mother. This is such an incredible revolution. And once you put it that way to people, you know you have a choice in life. You want to be needy, or do you want to feel needed? Your choice. You want to live your entire life trying to solve all your problems so that you don't die, and then die anyway at the end? Is that what life is? Or do you want to be necessary, an indispensable piece of a vast eternal plan? You want to be the one that makes this world perfect, peaceful, healthy, moral. And just to bring it up to current, literal current events, what's going to make people good to each other? How is this going to happen? You hear all the rhetoric, you hear all the slogans. Say no to racism. I've looked through the entire Torah to see what it says about racism. Nothing. Nothing. There is no word for racism. There's a lot of talk about races, different tribes, different peoples, different cultures, some better, some worse. Racism? Everything God created has a purpose. He's a careful creator. He creates what he needs, and not frivolously. Every human being that is born into this world is an indispensable piece of the puzzle, God's puzzle. Therefore, thou shalt not murder. Who should I not murder? Well, anyone God creates, you may not murder. What does this have to do with race? It's like murder is wrong because it's racist. No. Murder is wrong even if you kill yourself. Murder is wrong because it's murder, because God said, thou shalt not. If you introduce it as racist, you're weakening your argument. Stop trying to improve on the Ten Commandments. Oh, murder is bad because it's racist. No, there is nothing worse than murder. It's murder. On the one hand, that would make us much more moral. On the other hand, it would unite us. If we are all here to serve the vast eternal plan that God envisioned when he created the world, then we are indispensable to each other. I can't fix the world unless you're doing it with me, because you have your piece of the world. So God needs you for the same reason he needs me. That's why we have to have one God. One God meaning one plan, one purpose for which we all exist. So to the Rebbe, racism was a non-issue. If you're moral, if you're good, if you're respectful of God's creation, race is not an issue. Equality is not an issue. Morality is the issue. You don't need a dictator. You can set up a booth out in the country and people will pay for what they take. So what unites us? For real? Not love. Let's all just love each other. No, not love. Let's recognize why we're here. Let's recognize how we are needed and for what we are needed. And we will realize we're all in the same boat. That is a beautiful world. And it's not miraculous. You don't need revolutions. Just stop being so needy and do what's right for God. That's the future, folks. It better be. It better be the future. This is the secret to Chabad success. Remember, everyone predicted that when the Rebbe passes away, it's all going to fall apart. All 4,000 Chabad houses will close down. Actually, before the Rebbe passed away, there were only 1,500 Chabad houses. So not only didn't it close down, it quadrupled. Why? Why? Because it's true. Because it's simply true. We are not here to take care of our own needs. That doesn't make any sense. It's depressing. We are here to serve the Creator. And every passing day makes that truth more compelling, more convincing, more obvious, and therefore more people are responding appropriately. So in any way that we can further this message, further this cause, Get another person to relax. Stop being so needy. Ask what you are needed for, and the world is already a better place. We owe it to the Rebbe to complete the task. He gave us this immense gift of sanity and morality and goodness. We shouldn't disappoint him.